Colleagues, teachers, I send greetings to you from National Teaching Council. I am Laurie Sapon, the Deputy Registrar in charge of operations at the National Teaching Council of Ghana. In this lesson, we'll be looking at the Pillar 2, also the Pillar 1 of the Mentoring Coaching Framework. And as you all know, the Pillar 1 of the framework focuses on knowledge, understanding, and applications of the school curriculum. But before we start this lesson, let's try and reflect our minds on some of the things that we learned in the first lesson, particularly focusing our attention on the Pillar 1. We mentioned the things that come together to form the Pillar 1. If you remember, we said that the Pillar 1 is made up of the background knowledge of the pillar. It also talks about the focus, or in other words, the goal of the pillar. And then going beyond that, it talks about the strands in the pillar and the respective indicators of each of the rank. The indicators help us to assess whether the mentor and the mentee are meeting their targets. So now let's go deeper into the Pillar 1. That's the knowledge, understanding, and applications of the curriculum. The background knowledge of the pillar exposes the teacher to the fact that curriculum is developed based upon the characteristics around the learner. So every curriculum is designed with the learner at the center of that curriculum. If you take the learner's characteristics outside, you can't call it a curriculum. So having designed curriculum to support the growth of the learner, it takes the teacher to understand the individual characteristics of the learner and how the teacher can bring different strategies together to support the learner to comprehend the content of the curriculum. That is why it is critical for the mentor or the coach to support the teacher to understand the curriculum framework, the rationale behind it, so that they can support the teacher to implement the curriculum effectively. So one, it is the duty of the mentor to support the teacher to understand and apply the curriculum framework in relation to subject and curriculum knowledge, and how the curriculum and the subject relates to the framework. It takes the mentor or the coach to support the teacher to understand that. It is also the duty of the mentor and the coach to support the teacher to understand and apply the curriculum framework to the subject content knowledge. So whenever the teacher is teaching the content of the subject, the teacher will always relate it with the framework, the demands of the framework, the curriculum. So we ask ourselves, how many of us are familiar with the curriculum framework of the level that we are supporting or facilitating our lessons? The mentor and the coach also have to support the teacher to understand and apply the curriculum framework in selecting pedagogies appropriate for the grade level that he or she is facilitating lessons. The curriculum framework focuses much on social constructivist approach. So examples of social constructive approaches have been listed in this curriculum framework. That's the mentoring and coaching framework for teachers, for the teachers to understand how they can be applied. So it's the duty of the mentor to also assist the teacher to identify the various social constructive approaches that can support the learners to be active learners instead of becoming recipients of information. Now, when you go to, apart from the curriculum framework, it is also the duty of the mentor to expose the teacher to pedagogical content knowledge. Here, the focus is to help the teacher acquire knowledge and understand how to apply the content that he or she is teaching, or how the teacher needs to be supported to understand how he or she can select appropriate strategies to deliver the content at a particular grade level. So we're talking about grade level appropriate strategies. Some teachers have the content knowledge, but when it comes to the strategy that they will use to impart the content to a particular grade level, it becomes a challenge. That is where the CISO, who is the coach, or the head, who is the mentor, will have to sit down with the teachers to identify different strategies that they can be used to implement the content in the grade level that they are teaching. Then the third task focus on teachers and curriculum implementation. It's the duty of the mentor and the coach in supporting the teacher when it comes to lesson design or lesson planning. What goes into lesson planning and how the teacher should gather resources in planning lesson. The mentor and the coach will have to also support the teacher to deliver lessons in classroom, taking consideration different strategies that can be used to address each learner's needs. And some teachers also have challenges with assessment strategies. It's difficult for them to distinguish between assessment of, assessment for, assessment as, and when to use them. So the duty of the coach or the mentor to also support the teacher to understand when to use assessment of learning, assessment for learning, and assessment as learning, and the strategies that they can integrate in implementing each of the assessment strategy, diversity of assessment. Now, when it comes to effective teaching, what we are also saying is that the CISO, who is the coach, or the head with the mentor, will also have to sit down with the teacher and support the teacher to come up with strategies that will help the lesson to be very effective. Very effective here means engaging lesson that will help the learners to comprehend the concept that is being transmitted. Sometimes after teaching the lesson, if you ask the learners whether they enjoy, they tell that they didn't understand anything. In fact, they didn't understand the whole show. And some of the learners don't even feel involved. They don't see themselves being involved in the lesson. So the CISO or the head of the school will also have to sit down with the teachers. It can even be peer coaching, where you have to you discuss issues with your colleagues about how to implement effective teaching and learning activities in your class. So now taking the indicators of each of the first mentioned, that's going back to the strands that we're talking about in the pillar one. If you take the knowledge of the curriculum framework, we have indicators here. So on a particular session, if the CISO and the teacher or the head and the teacher agree to have coaching and mentoring session, they can decide that, oh, today let's focus our attention on educational framework and curriculum. So in doing this, in the session, their attention will be on how to support the teacher to become familiar with the education system and key policies that are guiding the education system. So the CISO will have to do the search, or the head will have to do the search to gather policies, education policies, and expose the teachers to that policies. Another task that they can also talk about, or you and your mentor, or you and your coach can also look at, is how they can support you to get comprehensive knowledge of the official school curriculum. The school curriculum that we have designed, they can support you to understand the curriculum, the learning outcomes, the fund matter knowledge, whatever content standard indicators and others. What do they mean? So you can also have a session under the knowledge of education framework and curriculum where you only focus on the fund matter knowledge of the curriculum so that you can have comprehensive understanding of the curriculum. It's also expected that the CISO or the head will support you as a teacher to understand the provisions, the curriculum framework, in terms of the aims. What is the aim of the curriculum framework, the curriculum that you are implementing? What are the values, the core competencies that you are supposed to support the learners to develop and use? And then the time allocation with respect to the subject that you are teaching. You need to have deeper knowledge of this and see how, what will help, so that it can help you to prepare your lessons. The CISO and then the coach, that is who is the coach, or the head who is the mentor, will also have to help you to secure pedagogical content knowledge for the school and grade that you are teaching. So we have different pedagogies. Some of them may not be suitable to the class or the grade that you are teaching. So you need to sit down with your CISO, who is the coach, or the head, who is the mentor, to also assist you if you have challenges with the pedagogies to be used for particular grade level. Then we say the children are not good. We have done so many things and they are not getting it. Sometimes it also depends upon our pedagogical skills that we are using. So if they are not getting it, you need to sit down with your mentor or your coach to see how best you can work on that. So you can see that all the bullets are the competencies that you can develop in a particular face-to-face engagement with your mentor or your coach. So ideally, you go through these things, that's the competencies, with your mentor, who is the school head. Then you will decide on which one you want to implement. The CISO can be around when you're implementing it to also look at how you are doing it. And if you're not getting the skills, they can help you in the conference session to discuss about the strength and your weaknesses and how you can improve upon them in a reflective practice. So this is about educational framework and curriculum. When it comes to teaching and learning, so under pillar one, it also has its own indicator or indicators. There are a number of them, more than 10. So it's the duty of the CISO or the head to also help the teacher to develop the ability to select, adapt, and develop pedagogical materials to meet the learning objectives and student learning needs. So in a particular session, this can even be done at the PLC level. The whole staff decide in their groups, depending on the subject that they are teaching, to go through how they can develop these competencies in teaching and learning. So let's assume that on one PLC session, you went through what is called the curriculum framework. Then another PLC session or mentoring coaching session, you can decide to dedicate the time to teaching and learning, having the bullet points here as your targets that you want to develop competencies around these areas and demonstrate them in the classroom. Then another engagement with your mentor or your coach. You can also tell them, oh, I think I'm okay with the curriculum framework. I understand it very well. I'm also well informed about teaching and learning strategies and how to design lessons for implementation. But my challenge is about assessment. So then, you may focus your attention on each of the bulleted points here, where the mentor or the coach will also support you to develop the following bulleted strategies, which will help you to also design good assessment for implementation. Because after going through these things, it's expected that you enhance your competencies on how to select and design appropriate assessment tasks for a given lesson to support the learners. It will also help you to also listen to learners and give constructive feedback after going through the assessment session of the curriculum framework with your mentor. You can also identify and remediate learners' difficulties or misconceptions, because the assessment is going to help you to understand their difficulties, the challenges, and how you can support them or you can refer them. It can also help you to demonstrate understanding or awareness of national and school learning outcomes and others. And for each of the strands, you will see NTS, PTPDM. We have provided enough information that will help you as a teacher to also get references or to also consult the National Teacher Standard, the NTS, or the PTDM policy to get more information on how to implement these strands. The last strand under Pillar 1, which is the knowledge and understanding of the school curriculum, is communication and interpersonal skills. Some teachers find it difficult to communicate effectively to learners. So you can say that when I talk to the learners, they don't get it, they don't understand it. I find it difficult talking to them, or I find it difficult explaining things to them because their understanding is very, very low. Probably it's the way you communicate. So um, you can tell your mentor or your coach that I want to develop or enhance my communication skills. When that happens, you go through the 4 bullet points here with your mentor or your coach, making reference to the PTPM policy or national teacher standards or any document that will help you to also develop competence around these 4 bulleted points. So in all, what we are saying is that for a particular strand, you can schedule different meetings with your mentor on how to develop the competencies over there. It's not just one way session or one day session. You can break a particular pillar into different uh, meeting sessions so that for a particular meeting, so today we want to go through, or I want you to help me to become familiar with the knowledge and understanding of the curriculum framework. Another time you can say when can you have time with me so we go through teaching and learning as a instrument and coaching framework. On the other hand, the mentor or the coach can also observe your lesson and say that I think we need to have a meeting to discuss issues on curriculum and its implementation, or curriculum and its application in your class. Or the mentor can say that I think you're doing well, but you need more teaching strategies. So can we arrange to have a time to go through teaching and learning strategies? You can do that with your mentor. So either you or your mentor can schedule or can call for or can initiate a meeting for particular mentoring coaching session to address your needs so that you can support the learners to improve their learning outcome. So let's try it and see how it works. Having gotten these concepts, the same knowledge applies to the other three pillars. For each pillar that you take, there are background information, there are some strands, and also there are indicators. When we come to your school, we may want to engage you to find out how you can demonstrate instructional and social skills that will assist students to interact constructively with their peers. We may want you to give us strategies that you put in place in developing trusting and supportive relationship with your students or your learners. We may want you to tell us how you are able to communicate your student progress with their parents and school community, and even go ahead to or go further to ask you to provide evidence. If you are not able to demonstrate competencies in these areas, what it means is that your mentor or your coach is not supporting you. In other words, you are not benefiting from the coaching and mentoring session. So, colleagues, this is what entails in Pillar 1, that the knowledge and understanding of educational framework and school curriculum. We'll meet again to also have a discussion on the subsequent pillars, the Pillar 2, the Pillar 3, as well as the Pillar 4. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Have a wonderful time. Bye-bye.